Hello and welcome back, everybody. This is Mystic Games. Today we're going to be talking Dicefolk, and we're going to be talking tier lists. As I'm quite the expert at this point in Dicefolk, this is something I wanted to discuss. I've been playing this a lot. This is one of my variety games right now. I'm really enjoying it. I think this is a hidden gem. I don't think it gets as much love as it should, and I'm going to be making a tier list on it. I actually looked up a tier list of someone else, and they did a really good job on it. I wish I had the name of the person, but I would check them out. But that's literally like the only other tier list on this game, so I want to make one on my personal thoughts. We're going to be starting with the talismans starters, because I think doing them all at once makes the most sense. There's no reason to put them in the same category as all the other chimeras. They are starters. They are meant to go away from your team eventually. We're going to start with the warrior talisman, then go to the storm, and then go to the wrath, and then go to the pain in this. The rest of them we're going to go in order of where they drop in the book. The Beloid is the strength-based one, and I'm going to put him in B. He's a solid starter. He on spawn just hits, he does his damage once, and you continue the fight. It's very simple. Turboid is the rotation dice one, which is the storm dice. And when he enters or exits lead, he deals 1 damage. Essentially, you're going to deal 2 damage every time you rotate. I'm going to put him in A. The output overall is going to be higher than the output overall for B, the Beloid, because this hits once on spawn and then never happens again the rest of the fight, whereas this one you continually rotate, you get more damage. They can be upgraded with their int, which makes them really good. The next is the Wrath Talisman, which is the Iroid. And on spawn, it gains strength equal to the number of equipment slots used for the rest of the battle. I'm going to put this one in A. I think this one is very strong. Actually, this is hard to say. So I think it starts here, but I think this one has more potential than the Beroid. So early game, this is weaker, and these are meant to be the way I look at these, they're meant to be getting rid of. I think this one, like, there's 2 different lists I could do for this in a tier maker. I could do overall strength, which is kind of what I'm doing, and then versus progression. I think this one has some more progression than the Beloid does, but I think in the beginning of the game it's weaker, and you're going to be trying to get rid of these as pretty much as quick as possible generally. So because of that, it's not that good. I do think if you're keeping your team around, this becomes better than this would. Anyways, the Doloid is the last one. That is the, I want to say the Pain Talisman, which is the talisman I hate the most. But what it does is when it gets hurt, it inflicts bleed on everything. Bleed is when it rotates, it deals damage. I actually think this is very strong. I'm going to put it under the rotation dice, but I think potential-wise, these 2 are the strongest, then this one, and then this one. Just so everybody knows. And the new Will's DLC Talisman starter is actually probably S tier, because it just goes so well with what the faction does. But that's not really important for this list. I'm not doing Will's this time. I might do another list later for Will's separate with the same ratings that I'm going to be doing here. Just watch them both. Anywho, next we're going to move on to the actual chimeras that you're going to be putting in your team, starting with the Boglin. The Boglin you can either get from like a painting normally, or you can get it when you start with a talisman. It is weak. It does nothing. It has okay stats, but it really does nothing. It has no bonus effect, nothing. So you don't really care for it. Next, we're going to be talking Lunago. What it does is it gives strength to a random ally at the start of its turn. The iridescent version is way better. The regular version is alright. The way I'm going to put my list together, now that we're talking about normal Chimera, is you're going to have attacking Chimera, and you're going to have supporting Chimera. The only dice that don't really do that is the rotation dice, and we'll talk about that a little bit, because rotation is just try to move your things around into a way where that it's going to end up working, and a lot of the time you don't really have an attacking Chimera as much as you do with the other dice. But we're going to be focusing on supporting Chimera versus attacking, and then rating them in that way. So for a support Chimera, I think this is an A tier generally. What it does is very strong. It's a very nice support ability, and I just like it. When I have a good attacker, putting this as an ally gives me a very strong chance that he's just going to get stronger. Actually, I'm going to put him in A. Or B, I mean. I think he's above average. He's an A. He's above average Chimera. The only issue with him is he can miss unless you get the iridescent version. If you get the iridescent version, he's definitely A or S. Because then you can control where it goes. And it is intellect-based, so you can actually increase the strength you gain. And it only does last a turn, though, so that's important to know. And then it goes away. Next is Mama Hut. And when he gets hit, he gains strength. So what Mama Hut is it's a attack leader slot. This is like your leader slot Chimera for a team generally. I'm going to put him in B. He's a solid leader slot. Anything to the right is a attack leader slot, and anything to the left is a support. That's how I'm going to be doing it, just so you guys know. So like when I put this here, that'd be an attacker compared to a support. Putting support first, attackers be on the other side. And once I start, using the other rows, we'll try to make sure that you guys know where the separations are. But he's a solid attacker. So he gets hit, he gains strength when he gets hit, and then pretty much you let him get beat up and then you attack. The issue is that he needs to get hit to gain the strength to that attack, which you generally want to take the least amount of damage as possible. But he's not bad if you have ways to support him and heal him up and stuff. Again, very team situational, but a very good Chimera generally. Then you have Grizzly, Chisley. Sorry, I was thinking of the owl bear. You have Chisley, who when he attacks, he rotates the enemy team. Super good if you're using bleeds and stuff and you're using rotation against the enemy. The issue is rotating the enemy can be very bad for you. If it doesn't rotate somehow you want it to. So Chisley is a very interesting, very team-specific attacker. I'm actually going to put him in C. I think he's okay if you have the right team built around him, but he's very, very situational, whereas I feel like Mama Hut, the alligator, isn't as situational. Mink Pocket is the weasel that steals money. Where is Mink Pocket? Oh, there he is. He steals money that's based on intellect per turn. If you get him at the very beginning, super strong, because you just can farm gold and get his int up really quick. And if you find a way to support him, he is very strong. That being said, he's super situational. I would actually say he's probably better than him, because at least his ability, you're guaranteed something, whereas this ability is control at the best, and at worst, it's just you have to hit with him, and then he's moving things around that you don't want moved. If he's not in the right team. So he doesn't need a team built around him to work. He still gets gold for you. But if you get him later, he's useless. If you get him early, he's good. But that's pretty much how he works. And he can be an attacker all game. I have actually beat, I think, Salem with him. So, next is this thing called Tormentin. I want to say that's the name, Tormentine. When he gets attacked, he does confusion. He should be like an attack slot. He would be better in a rotation team where you're going to rotate him in, get him hit, put confusion on the enemy, then move him out. So when the enemy attacks again, he starts taking damage. The issue is you're taking damage to put confusion, and there's just better options to kill somebody. I'm going to consider him a support, even though he needs to be in the attack slot, but he's more of a rotation type Chimera. Then we're going to talk Kitsuna, which is like the essentially kind of the fox. Reminds me of a nine-tailed fox. This one's better than... I'm going to put this in A. What it does is it copies the attack of the opponent and then adds 1 to it, I believe. And then you just attack. It also has a good amount of health compared to other Chimera, and it's a solid attacking slot leader position to have. Next is Armantis. Armantis is probably a B tier. What he does is every time the dice run out for the enemy, he attacks once. So you put him in a support slot, you don't really have to worry about rotating him in. He does something. Whether or not he's in your... If he's in your team, he does something, because the enemy dice always have to be used up. So unless you're able to kill the enemy before their dice are used up, he's useful. Is he super good? No, but he's above... He's like average. You know, he's a little bit better than he could be. Worse, or better than the worst ones. Next is Fernesta. What Fernestista does is, like, it's like a plant looking creature. It heals your team. This is super good. This is A tier. So what it does is at the end of the turn, it heals one random ally. It can't target self, but it can heal one target ally. So it's either going to target the person in the lead slot, which is normally what you want to hit, or it's going to target the other ally. It's super strong because you can adjust, you can increase the intellect on it. That increases the amount that it heals per turn. It's free healing. It works at the end of the turn every turn. You put this in a support slot. Your leader attacks. Your leader gets hit. At the end of the turn, this heals a little bit of health. If you upgrade the int on it to like 3 or 4, you're pretty much going to almost always, you know, be solid. If you get the iridescent version, it's S, because it heals both of your allies. So then you can actually play a little bit of rotation, maybe have 2 attackers, or you can have someone that at least can help share damage if you need to, and it will heal both every time, so you can, like, rotate. It's very diverse, has very good potential. There are actually what I consider better healers than this, but it is a very strong healer. Healing in general is just super strong in this game. If you can get a healer on your team, you're pretty set, because it will support everything else. Okay, enough talking about how great that is. And the sad part is that's not even S tier unless you have it iridescent. There are better healers. We'll go over that. So, Mandragoon, which is the plant. Where is he? Here he is. No more opponent dice inflict sleep. This is worse, I would say, than... These two are pretty comparable. I shouldn't say it's worse. So when your opponent runs out of dice, it puts the opposing leader to sleep. This essentially can get rid of the next turn for the enemy, because they use their dice the first turn, you put the opponent to sleep. You can then use up all their attacks, rotate the sleeping opponent out of the way, beat on somebody else, and then next turn try to he'll get put to sleep. It's just great. You can essentially sleep the team and control the team with this. It's actually really strong. Actually, it's probably actually better than this, but you need to know what you're doing. This one is more, if you're newer to the game, I'd say get him, put him in your back line. He's going to help you. But this one's actually stronger once you know how dice works and movement and all that. So, yeah. They're both decent. This one's probably stronger into the late game as well. Next, you have Solomet. Solomet has really high damage, no health, and he loses attack per turn. I'm going to put him in B, because I do think he's better than some of the ones below. But he just crumbles as he fights. As you can see in his picture, he's literally crumbling. He's meant to just be a heavy hitter, that you kill them as quick as possible, and then you win. The issue with that is he falls apart. He has int on him, but the int's actually negative. Like, you don't want to increase it, because you can actually make him die quicker, which is not good. Anyways, next we're going to have Akama. Akama is super nice, so he has the ability to hit twice in an attack. Very good. I would say he's not as good as the Fox, but it's a solid leader choice. And you know what? We're going to put him lower A, because I think he's still good. These two are pretty comparable. Next you have the Lamb, which is mana based. So if you click on it once per turn, it can rotate your team. The upgraded version of it lets your team rotate in any direction you choose. This is really good in a rotation team, and it's really good in any team, really, because you can control movement. I would arguably put it in front of the bunny, because you're always going to... They're both kind of chance, I guess, but this one is really good when you need to rotate, especially if you have another dice that is a free rotation dice, because you normally have at least one dice for rotation. You can randomly move and then move back to where you need to be. So you have more control, I would say, over this than you do over the bunny. Next is Polymine, who is definitely is a support. It hits for 7 damage for every target. It's just good. The upgraded version, every other turn, hits for 7 damage plus on every target, which is extremely good. I would actually say the Iridescent's probably S tier. The normal version, though, I'd put him in A. He does like 21 damage immediately. It's just free 21 damage. Then he can sit there. He does have decent stats, too, so if you have to put him in the attacking slot, he can do that job and not be useless. So he's pretty good. Corabadius is the bird that is a spell, and every time you use the spell, it hits the opponent, the leader opponent. I think it has like 6 charges of it. It deals 5 damage. This is comparable to Polymine, but it only targets the opposing leader. It works once per turn. Essentially, it takes like 4 turns for this to do the damage that Polymine does. But overall, this actually deals like 30 damage compared to his 21. So I think it is better. And you're only hitting the leader, but you can do it every turn. You can kind of choose. And you can buff up its strength, and it's just useful. It's essentially another attack. It's not a bad Chimera. This one's really weird. So if he's in the slot and the enemy rotates, he deals damage to the enemy leader. So I like this, but I don't think it's that good. I'm going to put it here. I used to really like this guy when I first started because I thought he'd give me a lot more value, but I don't think the value you really get out of him is as good as it should be. Still a solid choice for a leader if you don't have any other choice. Well, I shouldn't say a solid, but he's an okay leader if you don't have another choice. At any point in the game, his ability is useful, whereas this guy is kind of random. He's really better in the beginning, and this one is really team-based. So as a leader, these choices are better above so far. Actually, you know what? We're going to put him here, because saying that he's better is not really true, I don't think. We're actually going to move him down. Oop, we're going to move him here. I actually think it's the opposite. I think the issue is later in the game he becomes super weak, whereas this is more always balanced. Next is Wargoyle. Wargoyle does what he does with his spell, except it works on the enemy. It works on your leader. So if you have a comma in the leadership spot, when you click on his magic ability, it makes him attack, not himself. I would actually put him in S tier, because if you get a solid leader in the leader slot, that's just another attack from the leader, and he just sits back and hits that button, and that leader gets to hit again. That's an extra attack. That's super strong. Also, you normally will stack berries that add strength and stuff to your leader, like your attacking leader person, whereas so you want him to hit the most. So like you're not going to put it on this bird. You're going to put it on the leader and then hit this button, and it makes him attack, whereas instead it would be him attacking. It's a weird thing, but pretty much trust me on this. This one's generally going to be better for your team. This is a solid support attacker, but this is a better support attacker because it just lets your leader, who you're probably buffing up like crazy, to just hit more. Next is Algiel. When he gets hit, he makes the enemy incapacitated. The issue with him is he needs to get hit for that to work. So and then he's set up to be like an attack. Like he'd have to be in the attack slot when he's more of like a support. I'm putting him in C. I think he's better than the Confusion, because once you hit, it just makes them not be able to do anything for the rest of the turn. Like if they have 4 attack dice and he hits this, it takes away their attacks. Whereas this makes them deal damage to themselves, but they still get to hit you. I'd say arguably just taking away their damage is better. Now, something I will mention in this tier list, when it comes to the enemy, this is really strong because incapacitating you is really bad. You're looking to beat the enemy as quick as possible, whereas the enemy is trying to drag out the fight as long as possible to deal as much damage to you, because just the way the game works, like once you die, you die. Once the enemy loses, they just go away and you have to fight another enemy. So them taking you down very slowly actually works comparatively to you doing that to them, because you taking them down slowly doesn't really benefit you unless it's a boss fight. That's the only time you're essentially on even ground is a boss fight, because then your health resets unless you're playing on harder difficulties. So that's something to mention there. Next is the snake. He does 1 poison on hit. I'm going to put him higher than the guy. His is controlled on int, so you can actually increase the poison. The starting poison is 2. He has an okay attack. He has an okay health. I think he's a pretty solid attacker for your team. Next is Lucky, or Lucky. Super good to fight against, not to use. It just gives you gold when you hit it. Obviously, that you having it and then getting hit gives the enemy gold doesn't really do anything, because the enemy is not going to spend it. But when you hit it, it gives you gold, and you're happy. Good enemy to face, not good to have on your team. It just doesn't do anything. Now here's an interesting one. Now we're talking about Jabalroga, which is the big toad here. Jabalroga has a ton of health, it has a good attack, but when it dies, its attack is spread out through your team. So if you have 10 attack on this bad boy and he gets KO'd, you deal 10 damage to your other 2 Chimera. He's definitely like a leader slot attacker. I would put him higher than the I don't know, that's kind of hard to say. I would say he's probably higher than the alligator, very slightly. This is something I would pick if you're good, like you have enough knowledge of the game. If you get, if you have one of these as a choice for a leader, I'd pick them first, but he's pretty good. You just need to make sure he doesn't die. If you're new to the game, I wouldn't pick him until you understand the game. But once you know it, he's just solid. He's a good Chimera to have. Just never let him die and you're good. That's his effect, is when he dies, he hurts you. So where is the cockatrice here? Or the Hydra cockatrice looking thing. Hydranath. So what this does is when it exits the leader slot, this is a rotation one, by the way. It's pretty good. It's a support. I would consider this more of a support Chimera. When it exits the lead, it deals 2 damage up to 3 times. It's random on if you're going to hit with it. I would put it here. I'd put it in B tier. It's decent. If you upgrade the attack on it and you have a good rotation team, this is really strong, because then it's going to leave. It's going to potentially hit multiple times. It could deal a lot of damage. But again, this is rotation team, so it is a support less than an actual attacker. As I said, rotation's kind of weird to rate because of the way they work. Next is the tank here. Now, he's supposed to be in the attack slot because you want him to get hit. He's similar to these 2 guys. I'm going to put him in C tier, and I'm going to put him between these 2. He serves the same focus. I consider these more support, by the way, than attack slots, even though they are... Like, I'm rating these as supports, whereas I'm rating these as attackers, just so you guys know, for C tier. Technically, he needs to be in the attack slot, and then he needs to get hit. And then he deals poison to the attacker. So he's good for the long game. So this is one of those Chimera that I would say is really good for the opponent to have and not good for you to have. Because you don't want the battle to be dragged out. So unless you have a lot of healing on your side, that's the only time you would do this strategy. And even then, it's not the most effective strategy generally. But again, he's not a bad Chimera, but you need a very specific build to work, and if you don't have that build, you just won't win. Next, we'll talk about Denoroth. Denoroth is a better toad. So he starts the fight off asleep, and then once he's awake, he hits for a ton of damage. And he's essentially the same stats as the toad, except he starts off asleep. So you need to get him hit to be woken up, and then he's a very strong attacker. He has a good amount of health. There's no negative side to him being KO'd. He's a really good attacker. I could almost put him in A. The issue is he is asleep, so you do have to get a hit. Sometimes getting hit is bad, depending on what enemy team you're facing. So, yeah. Next, we have this attacker. This is like it's called Mamadrio. What it does is when it hits you, it entangles your Chimera, so the Chimera can't get rotated. This is a really good enemy Chimera. or opponent Chimera, like for the enemy to have, because entangling you can mess you up. But against the enemy, entanglement isn't really that great, in my opinion. Like, it's not that big of a deal to entangle. There's very niche uses for this. Like, that's why I'm putting it in C. I don't think it's bad, but I think it's very niche. Being furry is the flying monkey right here. I'm going to put him in C as support. He gets, whenever you gain strength, he attacks. He has very low health, and he has he honestly has kind of lowest attack. They really probably should have gave him one more point of strength to make him actually balanced, in my opinion. I think he's solid, but he requires a specific team. Like, you need to be getting strength, so you need to have the dice that add strength. You need to have the bunny in your team that adds strength for this to work. You need to have, like, this is actually a good example. So he'd be your leader, right? Every time he gets hit, he gains strength. You have Lunago, who gives strength at the start of every turn randomly, and then you have him. So he gets hit, he attacks. Start of the turn, he adds some attack to either him or him, he attacks. Like, that's a good combination of a team. For an example of like a team, like he'd be your leader, and these would be your two supports. They just sit in the back and they buff and do things. Next is Loot Rush. And I like Loot Rush. What Loot Rush does is every time he leaves the leadership spot, he gives the new leader strength. He's also one of those ones that would go good with the strength gain team. The only difference is he requires rotation. The good thing about him is he controls where the strength is going. So, like, you always know when he exits lead that the next leadership position is going to get the buff. So if you want to give it to Akama here, he goes in, you rotate. If you have control over the rotation, you know he's going to go in. He's going to get that extra strength, and he's going to hit twice. Very solid. You can upgrade the strength just like you can with the bunny. The only additional effect is you need to rotate for this to work. So these two are kind of the same to me, in my opinion. I would say that once you know the game, he's better, but they're very similar to their job. Next is Felrod, which is like a flying little bug. He is B tier, but high B tier. He just does 2 damage every time an ally gets hit. And you can upgrade that with Int. The stats on him are actually decent. He has a ton of health, and he has a decent amount of damage himself. But he's meant to just sit in the back, and every time you get hit, deal some damage to the enemy team. I think the only negative to it is that it's random. So the damage he deals is going to be randomly distributed throughout their team, which sometimes that's bad. Normally you want to focus on the person you have in the leadership slot for the enemy as well. But it's still solid. This is one that you can get early on, upgrade the Int on it, and it can stay in your team like the whole game. It's a good support unit. Mothless is like such a cool design. It looks like Mothman, but it's such a bad Chimera. So what it does is, like, if it attacks and it attacks an ally, it attacks the enemy instead. Okay. Why don't you just attack the enemy? There's no reason to use this unit. This unit makes no sense. It's 22 health, has no attack on it, and it attacks the enemy instead of attacking its ally when it attacks the ally. Like, it's like we're just adding extra steps to the game that we don't need to add. It's a weird thing. Like, there are synergies with the Pain Talisman, but again, I'm not a big fan of the Pain Talisman, but it's just a weird thing. Now, it does look like Mothman from, like, Urban Lore, which is awesome. So I do like the design. I just think it's pointless. I wish it was like attack your own target, and then it attacks twice, and then it just had more damage on it. Like, that would be way cooler. Anyways, we're going on to the rooster here. So, the rooster's name is Galinine Asan. I just butchered that. So when he attacks, there's a 50% chance that he's going to give strength to a random ally for the rest of the battle. That's good, but it's random. He's supposed to be an attacker, which is the problem. So he's a support, but he's an attacker, right? He's going to buff your team, but he also needs to attack to buff your team. So he's good, but he's not as good as like these two because they buff what you want to buff. You know you're going to get a buff, and you don't have to move them to do so, and you don't have to attack with them to do so. I'm going to put him in support. I'm going to put him in B tier because I think he's good. But because he has to attack, we're going to put him in lower B. I think he's better than C tier. Because permanently adding strength is really strong. But you would have to have a support dice attack for this to really work properly. And then you're also just taking away an attack from your main guy every turn, which is generally probably worse than attacking with him to buff. I think he's solid. The idea was really good. I think they honestly could have made it 100% chance to give one strength the rest of the battle, and it would have been good. And then just make the iridescent version should have been 100%, and then it should have been to the ally with the highest damage on attack. And they should have made it probably 2 strength instead of 1 to start. But anyways, you can increase it with int. It's not bad. You can increase like the additional attack buff, strength buff you're going to get for your ally. He's very situational though, and you have to have certain control in a certain group to have it work, and certain dice. So we're going to put him in B. He's not bad, but he's not really good. You have another pain dice, which is like the mouse vampire looking creature here. What this does is when you attack an ally, it gives it regen. 3 regen, but then it deals 4 damage. So essentially what you're doing is you're giving it 6 healing over 3 turns for 4 damage. This should deal like 2 damage. It has no health on it. It deals okay damage, but the point of it is to attack your own ally to give it healing. This is just bad. This is a very niche unit. Like I could put it in C, but most of the time this is just not good. As I said, the Pain Talisman is really weird because most of the effects, in my opinion, just aren't good enough to support the what they're trying to actually do. Anyways, next is the tiger, like eel-looking creature, which is actually a really cool design. I like it. It's like a tiger mixed with like an eel or like a hydra snake type creature. When it attacks, if the target is an ally, it re-attacks all opponents. So this is like an attack slot Pain Talisman guy. I'm actually going to put this one in B tier. I actually think it's better than most of the other Pain Talisman units, because when you attack your ally, what it does is it redirects that attack to every other enemy at once. So whenever you're able to target your ally with like a ranged attack, you can actually target them. It will turn, hit every enemy, and you can keep doing it. This is actually, you know what? I'm actually going to put it in here, A tier. The thing is, you need the right dice for this to work, because if you don't have the right dice, it doesn't work. It requires a lot of ranged attacks. But it's really, really strong if you get the right dice for it. This is a very strong Chimera. Even if you don't get 100% the right dice for it, it's still a decent Chimera. Like, you're just going to be dealing a lot of damage with it. The iridescent version is just insane, because then it doubles up the damage, essentially, every turn. Next is the double snake here. It's called Biomythus. Pretty much once it attacks once per turn, if the target is an ally, it deals poison damage equal to its strength to a random ally, or to a random enemy. I'm sorry. So you target your enemy, you hit your ally for 3 damage, and then you poison an enemy for 3 damage. Bad. This is an attacker too, like 100% an attacker. These are all actually attackers, which is just bad. I don't know. So they're all on this side. Sorry. And they're all bad. I'm not going to even rank them. I would actually probably say the regen's better, and then poison's probably better than that. This just does nothing. It literally just does nothing. Next you have the fruit bat, which I find funny because it's a fruit bat made out of fruit. Looks like a watermelon. Vampina. And when it gets hurt, it gives random regen to an ally. So if this gets injured, what it does is it heals one of your allies for 2 regen, which means 3 health over 2 turns. You can upgrade the int on this, and this can be very good. This is a very solid support unit. If you ever have like an enemy that has like the range dice, you throw it on, let it hit this, and then this is randomly going to heal another ally. And you can actually get the iridescent version, which allows it to trigger this ability twice, which can land on the same ally or onto 2 different allies to spread the healing out. I'm probably going to put it down here as a support in A or in support in B, because I think it's a lower B support, because you're not always going to get the effect. And you do have to take damage for the healing to work, and it can't heal itself, so eventually it will die if you let it get beat up enough. But its effect is helpful. It's just situational, so arguably it could be put in C. So next we have Cactier. Whenever it is hurt, it gives Thorns to the leader +2. So Thorns is if you attack it, you take damage when you hit it. Like, it gives that damage back. So if this is hurt, it gives Thorns to your leader. This is really good for the enemy, not as good for you, but I will put it in C tier. I think it's a better support than these guys would be, because you can, again, you can use like a ranged attack from the enemy to hit it and then give your main guy Thorns, so at least when he gets hit, there's some return damage there. But again, you're playing in a way that you're trying to take damage to deal damage, so you want a healer that's going to help you in that situation. That being said, it's a C just because it doesn't help you. Now, I will tell you, this is one of the most annoying enemies in the game to face, because it just makes you take unnecessary damage with every attack, and it's normally found towards like the end zones, so that it has a ton of health. And you're going to just get tons of Thorns, and you can actually die from Thorns, so that's something to be aware of later in the game. But for you, it's not as good as it is for the opponent. Because again, you're trying to kill them or take them out as quick as possible, and they're, trying to outlast you more or less. Next is Myrmilon. It's the ant here, or I don't know, that's a beetle, ant, whatever you want to call it. It's kind of a mix of 2. When it is attacked, it puts bleed on everybody. This is really good because it's bleed on everybody. Now, I will say this again, this is one of those things that is better for the enemy, I would say, or the opponent that you're facing, but this is usable by you as well. And I would actually say that on if a team that you're trying to rotate the enemy around, it's very strong. I'd actually probably put it there. This has a lot of potential damage. I'm putting it in high B because I think it could be A, but it's a situational again. A lot of this requires you to have a team that's going to bleed the opponent, and then you want to make the opponent move. Like, this would be a good one to have, and then you move him into position, and then he hits, and it rotates the team, right? Because then you're dealing a ton of bleed damage. Like, that's a decent combo for him. But again, there's setup that needs to happen there, and I'm not a big fan of setup. I like to know that I'm getting damage and what my damage is going to be on every turn. Now, we have the Wolf unit, Lycanis. Super good. So on turn, if it is not at full health, it just attacks an opponent. It has 18 health, which isn't super high, but it's not super low. It deals 6 damage, which is, I would say, above average on normal. It's a good support unit. This is not meant to be an attacker. It looks like it would be an attack unit. It is really not meant to be your attacker. It's just free damage. You let it take a hit intentionally. You put it in the back row, and you just let it do some damage at every turn. This is better than the Praying Mantis because it's guaranteed. I would say it's better than that. I would actually say, because this one doesn't really require a team to work, I'm going to put it there. This one, the bug will probably end up doing more damage than Lycanus will overall in the fight, but Lycanus will deal good consistent damage. He's a good support to have. He's in the Warrior Talisman. If you get him, I definitely recommend you pick him up and make him a back row. And then try to find something else that's better for your front row, but he is a solid support attacker because he can sit there and just he deals extra damage every turn. Just make sure he gets hit once, takes like 2 damage or something, and then he just let him sit there. Solid unit. Next, you have the Skeleton Dragon, who is really bad for you. Really good, again, with the enemy, because they like to do certain combos that essentially mean you're going to take a ton of damage. Because what it does is when it attacks, it hurts its own team. The issue is when it hurts its own team, it's usually paired with like the thing that gives it thorns, or the thing that bleeds you out, so that when you move, you take more damage. So for you, horrible, because you taking damage matters, the enemy taking damage, it doesn't. Because again, the enemy's just trying to make you weaker for the boss fight. He has 20 HP and he has a high amount of attack. He's there to just hurt you. So for you, I would argue that he's probably here, because you can use it and there are teams where it would work, but most of the time you need a way to offset the damage he deals. And honestly, if you're offsetting the damage he deals, you probably have another Chimera that does that. That means him dealing damage to your team is probably not helping you as much, because the other Chimera that has to get hurt to deal its effect is probably not that great. Essentially, like using Vampina. Actually, that doesn't even work because that's on attack. Huh. I actually don't know what you would use. Like, you'd probably use this, like, with it, again, this is just good in general. There's really, like, this is, you could combo that with this, and then you would be offsetting most of the damage. The issue is that good enough? Probably not. Again, in the Pain Talisman, there's builds around this guy, but there's just better things to do than hurt yourself, I would say. Now you have the one that gives thorns at the start of the turn if it's in leadership slot. It has a ton of health, has very low attack. It's meant to tank damage and then just gain thorns, and then when the enemy hits it, it kills themselves. Not a bad leadership slot. I'm going to put it in C, because again, you're taking damage to gain thorns. But if you can get, like, if you get on this guy and you get the thorns up pretty high, he already has good health. He's pretty strong. The only thing you have to watch out for is, like, energy attacks, because they want to trigger it. But if you're fighting enemies that have, you know, attacks, like all physical attacks, very strong unit for a leadership slot. The issue is he's situational, and there's just better choices. Like, you're really relying on the enemy not to have energy attacks, because if the enemy has any energy attacks, he just becomes way worse than he would be. Then we have Whiskerow. Whiskerow is when he's KO'd. Where is that big boy? Whiskerow, when he is KO'd, he gives his strength to his allies for the rest of the battle, and he has a pretty good amount of strength. He's a decent support. You put him in there, you let him die, and then your other 2 Chimera just become way stronger. The issue is you want him to die. So you need an item that revives him every time. Otherwise, he's dead, and you only get to use that for a fight. So, I'm going to put him in B, and I think he's better than the other guys below him here. But I think he's very situational, and you need to know the game to use him properly. But he is useful. Just very situational. And there are better choices. Like, you can get strength from, like, these guys. It's not as much, but it is strength. So. Next is Shamri. Shamri, when he gets hit, he gives you a shield. He's a giant tick-looking creature. When he's attacked, he gives guard to a random ally. The issue with him is he needs to be attacked. He's kind of in the same group as these guys are down here. Like, I need to get hit to do something. Giving it shield, though, is pretty strong. The question is, where is it strong? I would say it's about equivalent to the dog and the turtle, because I think these guys are about the same. I think he's probably there. Next is Cactail, which is the cactus knight-looking creature here. When an ally is attacked, grant 1 thorns to a random ally. Not a bad ability. It would be better if it was to all allies, which is what the iridescent version does, because then you're guaranteed to get thorns. Certain teams really strong, but this is super situational, in a sense. I'm trying to think where I'd put this. I'm going to put it probably in B, because it's situational, but it's guaranteed. Like, as long as he's not getting hit, you are getting thorns. And you can upgrade the thorns damage. Starts off at 1, but you can get it up to 2, 3, and then you're stacking thorns. Even if you get him to like 3, he's going to be decent. Because every turn you're just going to be gaining a ton of thorns. Start of the game weak, end of the game stronger. I'm going to put him there. We'll put him there. I think there's more uses for the Caracal cat than there is for Whiskio. They're pretty even, though. So the other one here is, the next one is the penguin. My god, I'm like losing my mind here. I should have put this in order before I did this. Ramthaus. When he enters lead, he inflicts 2 bleed on all opponents. B tier support. On a rotation team that you're rotating the enemy around, really good. Same with the Beetle. The issue with him versus the Beetle needs to get hit for his to trigger. The Beetle's is slightly better, as it gives 1 more bleed initially, but he has to get attacked. This is just rotating him in. And then if you rotate him out, and then rotate him back in, you get it again. So this is kind of a good team right here. Like, you move these 2 in, and then maybe have like the owl here hit after. You know, there's ways to make it work, but this is a pretty interesting combo. You can also do, like, if you get the iridescent version of this, it's even stronger, because then it's when it exits and enters, you just bleed. So you just keep rotating in and out, and then you do things to rotate the enemy team. You can deal a lot of damage. It has a high attack on it, but it doesn't have any health. And it has int for the 2 bleed, so you can increase the bleed by increasing its intellect. So it's good. It's a solid Chimera. Although it's situational, it does require certain teams. Then you have... Where is he? The Rhino. Well, the Rhino. It's more of a... not Stegosaurus. It's a Triceratops kind of creature. Kind of mixed with this Stego, though, with the back, pines there. What this does is when it enters the leadership spot, it rotates the enemy team. This is like a better version of Grizzly. This is support as well. And this is definitely a rotation. This goes well with the penguin guy right here, by the way. I'm trying to think. I'm going to put him there. He's good for rotation teams. There's different combos. I'm not going to get into that because I'd have to go through all the other Chimera. You can already imagine, like, him with the bleed, what they could do, that kind of stuff. So then you have the Piece of Toast, which is a healer. And what the Piece of Toast does, at the end of the turn, if it's not in the leadership spot, it heals 1 HP to the ally leader. So this always hits your leadership slot. This is actually kind of better and worse in ways than the plant here, because it always hits the leadership slot. It's like a good guaranteed. If you're not in a rotation team, this is really good. I would argue it could be better than this. Ugh. In the upgraded version of this is worse than the upgraded version of this. Like, this upgraded is probably S. This is still A when it's upgraded. Normally, you're not going to care if this gets upgraded, because all the upgraded version does is allow it to heal itself. Whereas you don't really want to put it in the attack slot. You want this to be a supporter. It has no health and it has no attack. And it has only 1 healing. So you need to upgrade the healing to make this good. But if you get like a 3 on that, like even if you get like 3 per turn, 3 healing per turn on your leader is just solid. Because it allows you to take some hits that you wouldn't want to take normally. We're going to put him behind here, though. The only reason I would put him higher is you can always hit your leader, which is generally the one that you want taking damage. But they're both good. I mean, they kind of serve the same purpose. I would say this one's overall a little bit stronger than this one. If you get iridescent of this is way better than the iridescent version of the toast. So next we have the worm, Astos. At the turn start, if it is in the lead, it deals 2 damage to a random opponent. And if it's not in the lead, it hurts your ally for 1 damage. The 1 damage doesn't increase with intellect, whereas the damage to the opponent does increase with intellect. So this just does free damage. I would argue that this is a C tier unit, though, because you have the butterfly that every time an ally is hurt, it deals int damage the same way, but it can do it multiple times per turn. So you want this in your leadership slot, and then you want to get its int up for it to do more. I would actually put it probably here. I think it has more use than these guys do, but it's situation. These are all very situational. And then this is just not... That's only good in the beginning. And then we have Hundavel, which is the dog. He gains strength at the start of his turn. That's based on intellect. He's a solid attacker unit. Where is he at? He's the big, dark, bulldog-looking creature. There he is. So he gains strength on spawn for the rest of the battle. And then he has like a slightly better version if he's iridescent that adds his equipment to it as well. But you can increase the additional damage on spawn by adding intellect to it. I wish his starting attack was actually a little bit stronger, because he has 7 attack, but he only has 18 health. But you can upgrade it with int, and you can also upgrade his strength, obviously. But I wish the starting strength was like 3 or 4, because it would make more sense. That being said, I think he is a tier because he's always good. You always know what you're getting. You're always getting at least 7 damage. You have 18 HP. You can upgrade him by both strength and int to increase his damage. He's just a solid attacker. He's not bad. He doesn't have any negative effects on him. Like he deal damage to if he's not in leadership or anything crazy. He just buffs himself and then attacks. Next we're going to talk about Krampus here, or Kramphull as they call him. When he's hurt, he deals damage to the random opponent equal to the amount of equipment used plus his intellect, which is 2 to start. He is okay. He's kind of like a support unit that may do something. I could arguably put him in B, but I think he's more of a C tier, and I think he's lower C, honestly, because I would consider him more of a support, and he doesn't have that much health to actually get beat on, which is a weird thing because he's meant to get hit. Next we're going to talk about the hyena. The hyena is called Traglamar. Traglamar is attack. If the target is an ally, gains its strength for the rest of the battle. So he's not bad. He's kind of like, you aim at your ally, you deal damage to your ally, and then you take its strength. The issue with it is you do deal damage to your ally, so like you're going to probably hit your ally once, gain its strength, and then you can't hit it again, if that makes sense. So it's a weird situation that you're taking at least one action to try to hit an ally, to then gain power, to then attack. This is a very interesting creature. I would say it's a B tier. It could be A tier if you have the right team, but we're not going with that, right? We're talking about overall. I would say this is up there with these guys because it's essentially, it has a con, but it's a usable con. We're gonna put him. I think he's better than the toad because I think you could hit something once and get its strength equal or past the toad, and you also have the option to hit something again to gain even more power. Although you might kill your ally at that point. That's something you have to be aware of. It'd be cool if you attacked your ally and it didn't actually hit it. and it gained its strength instead, like, that's what they should have did. Because then you could actually, like, stack the damage. Or do you deal half your damage to the ally when you target them or something. Anyways, next we're going to be talking about the dragonfly poison scorpion creature called Agripatira. Pretty cool design on this one. You are hurt, you inflict poison equal to the number of equipment slots on the enemy. So, pretty much, it brings out poison. It's a B tier support unit. Actually, I'm going to put it down here because it kind of serves, it's a weird unit. It's kind of doing the same thing as this guy. I think this guy actually does the job better though. Yeah, I think it's a weaker version of this. The only reason that it could be considered better is if you can attack it with your own guys a couple of times, it would get more poison, but like that's just a weird situation as well. You're killing yourself to hurt the enemy. The enemy's hurting you to kill itself. It's kind of the opposite, so I'd put him there. I'm actually going to put him at the end of the... I think he's better than the Krampus, though. So next is the Hippo Rhydon from freaking Pokemon. That's what this thing reminds me of. It's like a hippo version. When 4 allies attack, or when you get 4 attacks off, essentially, this attacks all opponents once. This is a solid support. It requires 4 ally attacks to do its thing. The issue with it's like with a comma, like if you get this with the comma, or you get this with the Aluka, I want to say its name is, or something like that, this is really strong because it's going, these guys attack multiple times, so he's going to be getting his attack everybody off. But again, we're not looking at the ideal team with him, and as the fact that he won't gain the ideal team every time, I'd probably put him in B tier, and I'd probably put him here, because I think overall the damage he's going to deal would probably be, actually he's probably above him. He'd probably deal more damage than him over time. Even without the ideal team, he would probably deal more damage than the Praying Mantis character. Oh my god, now we have Hamper Camp. Hamper Camp is awesome. Hamper Camp, literally when he leaves the leadership position, he gives Leech, which means the first attack you hit, you heal for. Such a good support unit. Love this guy. He is S tier. He's S tier even without his iridescence. With his iridescence, he's super S tier. He's S tier if you get him iridescent, A tier if you don't. He's S tier both ways because he's guaranteed to heal as long as you rotate. And if you can get your rotation dice to be essentially free rotations, you can put him on pretty much any team. He's just good. He also has a very solid attack strength and a decent amount of health. Next is Morsipion, which is the koala bear. This thing's a beast. It has like no health, but it deals a lot of damage. It's better than the golem because it doesn't fall apart, and it essentially serves the same purpose. It's up here with these guys. The only difference between this and the toad and the sleeping guy are that it has no effect, and it has less health than they do. It's hard to say where you put it. I'd probably put him here because I think the fact that he has no negatives other than his health makes him better than the other two. But he's easier to be KO'd. So, we'll put him there. Next is the Sleeping Ghost. Solomon Lim. Lim. On spawn, he inflicts sleep on a random opponent. He has no health. I shouldn't say he has no health. He has pretty low health, and he has a decent attack. The issue is he only on spawn inflicts the sleep, which is not great, because there are other things that do better. Like that creature, when no dice happens, you get sleep. I would actually put him in C tier. He's a decent support because you put him in the team and he does something. I'd actually put him higher than these guys. I'd put him in top of C because he works. Probably here. He just works. You put him on your team, he puts somebody to sleep, and you're happy. You're probably not as happy as you would be with some of the other Chimera above the list, but he's decent. Like, you can pull him and not be like, he has a use. It only works once, that's the sad part. GOL, which is the god of our universe here. Not really, but that's what he looks like. When he exits lead, he gives the leader guard. Again, very strong support. Requires rotation. Guard is very good, though. Guard can save your life. I don't know if Guard's good enough for... I think it's A tier. I've never really got this guy, but he is useful. It would be better if his iridescent version isn't even better, because it doesn't guarantee your allies both get guard. That's what it should do. I'm going to put him in A tier. I'm going to probably put him in lower. We'll put him around the strength gain guy here. Guard is really strong. If you can move him into guard, or like into the starting slot, and then move your attacker back in, your attacker then gains guard. A lot of bosses become like, the boss that hits really strong, like this guy, he becomes very weak if you have that in your team, because guard pretty much negates him, and it allows your team to survive things they want to survive. Guard's pretty good. The next guy is Marmurgagama. My god, these names. The next Chimera here. What he does is he burns. On the end of the turn, he inflicts 3 burn on the enemy leader. I love burn. I think burn is so fantastic in this game. A lot of people, they don't rate this guy, I don't think, very highly. Burn is like free strength. It's like gaining 3 strength. And if you get this up, I had this guy, like one of my games, I think he was dealing 10, almost 10 burn or something. Like I had like 7 or 8, like every turn. So it would just increase my damage insanely fast. And it works every time. It doesn't miss. There's no chance on it. It just works on turn end. You burn the enemy. I actually had the iridescent version at one point. I think that's when I was dealing like 10 or 11 burn per turn. And it was just insane. He's meant to sit into the support slot and just burn the enemy. He's actually better than... he's probably S... You know what? He's S tier, I think. He's either really high A tier or he's S tier. The thing is, he needs some upgrades on his int. But even once you upgrade his int like once or even 2 times, he's just so effective at what he does. Because you're just gaining 5 damage every turn, and the damage stacks. So, essentially, when you put the burn damage on the enemy, it loses 1 at the end of the turn, but then when you put next turn, it will gain another 5, so it'll be at 9. Like, it's just really strong for killing enemies like Salem or bosses, because it just stacks burn so quickly that you can hit them for a ton of damage. One of my favorite teams that I had him on was using this guy, because he attacks multiple times. There's a chance. I was playing like the lucky version, and I got this in him, and it was just insane. I was dealing so much damage. We'll talk about him a little more when we get there. I think he's one of my favorite Chimera, though, for the attack leadership slot. The boar here, Svindel, when he gets moved into leadership, he just deals double damage. He gains focus, which means essentially he hits for twice the amount of his strength. He has a decent amount of strength. He has a decent amount of health. I'd argue that he's probably a A-tier attacker. He could... The thing is, he could be a B tier. It's hard. He's rotate. You know what? He's probably B tier. He's probably actually in front of the snake. I do like him, but he requires being rotated around for his full damage effect. And his damage isn't... It's going to be like when you buff him, he'll probably be as strong as the toad. So, like... He's better. You don't have to worry about any negatives if he faints like you do with the toad, but overall his damage is probably lower than the toad's. But he's a solid like attacker if you don't have anything better. Bakamu is rotation team. You rotate him in and out, and then you hope something goes to sleep. It's only a 25% chance. He does have a decent amount of health and an okay attack, though. He's probably a B tier unit. Where in B tier? Probably here. He's a support. He's not really meant to attack. He can take some hits for you if you have the need to spread some damage around. So he's not a bad unit. Next we'll talk about our good boy, Yetzi. He's a pretty boy. When he exit leads, he puts Frozen on the random opponent. So, good, but not that good, because random opponent isn't always solid. The issue with Yetzi is he's kind of I'd consider him more of a support unit, but he can be a attacker. He's obviously on the rotation team, which, again, they don't fulfill roles in the same way. We'll put him in. I'm going to put him in as an attacker, though. I think he's set up to kind of be an attacker. He would work well with the boar, because, you rotate him out. Hopefully Frozen lands on the leader. You get him, he gets focused, and he hits for, triple damage or quadruple damage, however you want to look at it. But it's a weird, because he's like a support, but he's not. He's like an attacker as well. It's weird. His ability support, but I would say he's also an attacker with his strength base. So we'll put him there. Next is Newtzy. Newtzy is the Newt. When he rotates, there's a small chance the ally leader gains 30% chance of focus. If you get the iridescent version, it's 50% chance. I don't like chance in this game a lot. I like to know what I'm going to get. But I would argue that he's probably A tier. He's lower A tier, but he's probably A tier. Pretty much if you rotate, there's a chance that your leader will get focus, which is just good. If you get iridescent, he's better, but he's still probably A tier. Again, that's all luck based, so you can leave it, take it or leave it, kind of. Chimera. This one is good on rotation teams, so every time it enters lead, it deals its damage. It has a decent amount of damage, has a decent amount of health. Nothing spectacular, but entering lead, it deals its damage. It's probably better than Spindel, probably worse than all these other guys. Next is Michiki Chi, which is another good boy. It's kind of a mix between a dog and like a lion almost, like Egyptian style lion looking creature. What it does is every time it enters lead, it deals 4 damage to all opponents. This can be increased with its int. It has an okay stat line, not that much health though. But this is good. Again, this is a rotation type of creature. This is good on any team because you can get the int up and then rotate, and it's solid. Would I say it's an A tier effect? Probably not, but it can be. That's the thing. Can this be an A tier effect? I would say it's probably here. It's probably upper A. I think it's I think it's good on its own merits. It's really good in certain teams, right? But on its own merit, it's just good. It's not bad. It's not. It just works by itself. You don't need too much. This creature is called Reptile. Reptile has a really interesting effect on it. Where is he? Why am I not seeing him? What he does is, on allied strength gain, he deals 3 int damage to a random opponent once. He's similar to Bayan Furry, but I think he's worse. Like, I'd rather have him on my team than I would him. It's an interesting effect, though, with the int. His iridescent version is much better, but we're not talking about that, really. I bring them up, but they're, I'm kind of basing them on their basic ability. The funny thing in this game, too, is there are certain iridescents that are actually worse, I would say, than the regular. Anyways, we're talking about Zalatovis next. On ally attack, great chance of gaining 2 strength for the rest of the turn. This isn't fantastic because this is a rotation type of thing. Its variables are high because you're rotating. I will say it is a decent attacker. I will put it here. Actually, I'll put it above these guys. I think it has its merits. Like, in a rotation team, you can make this work. But it only gains the strength for the rest of the turn. And it's not even guaranteed. So, I think I did actually beat a run with him, but he was just literally sitting there. I really never used him, I don't think. Alright, next is a spell minion, which is Origaru. Target an ally, it becomes leader. This is essentially the same thing as the goat, but you get to choose the Chimera. It's just better. It has 3 casts instead of like 5, like this one has, I think, 5 or 6 casts. This one only has 3. You get the iridescent version, and it allows you to control the enemy team too. But the regular version, just your team, and it's very strong. Being able to control what Chimera is in your front lines and being able to rotate and then control the rotation back without having to use a dice is pretty powerful. That's why he's up so high, and that's why he's even better, because he gets to choose. Solid mana Chimera right there. Next, we're going to be talking about Raitin, which is a electric, I don't know, raccoon, I guess. That's what they were going for here. On rotation, it deals 3 damage to the opposing leader. This is pretty strong. When you're rotating, you're probably going to rotate once or twice. That means you're probably dealing 6 damage per turn at least to the enemy leader with this. It's probably equivalent to one of these. It's close to these guys right here in damage, probably. Again, you need to rotate though, so that's why it's a little. I would actually say these 2 are just better for support than this is, but this is not bad. Next is Maluz. It has a spell. Target an ally grants 3 strength for the rest of the turn. And then he's really cool. I like the design of Maluz. So pretty much it has a spell that can be used 4 times, and it gives the ally 3 strength based on int, so you can increase this to just deal additional damage for a turn. S tier because you can control it. Getting additional strength per turn is very powerful. There's a lot of builds you can do with that. It's essentially the bunny, except you're guaranteed to get the strength where you want it to go, but it has limited usage. The thing is, most of the time you want to end the battle as soon as possible. So if you're able to, you want to try to be done in like 3 to 6 turns tops, I would say. So you're going to be able to get a good amount of usage out of this, and it just speeds up the fight. Having 4 usage, and if you have any type of mana regain, you're pretty much going to have this buff the whole fight. Just extra damage on your guy, so it's a decent support unit that you don't have to worry about. He just sits in the back line, he buffs, right? So say you got this and this, they're both spell minions. You buff with this, whatever attack minion you have gets extra damage, and then you hit this button, it attacks for free, and then you just use your dice to attack again, and it gets all that extra damage. So you're probably gaining at least probably 9 damage per turn almost every time. And again, that damage increases as well. Essentially it's the same as the burn, except this is free. That's why I have him higher. Next is Lagamar, which is on spawn, inflicts burn on all opponents. He's alright. He's probably, I would consider him A tier. The issue with him is it only works on spawn. This guy's better because every turn he drops burn on the opponent leader. This is only on spawn, so it only happens once, and then those burns fade. So you're not stacking burn like you would be with the dinosaur magma thing. I think it's probably an A tier, simply because 4 burn on all targets is pretty good to start. I'm going to put it above the Newt. The Newt is random. You're not always going to get the extra damage, whereas this is always going to guarantee you 4 additional damage at least the first time you hit. You're going to gain probably quite a bit of damage from this, whereas you won't from this as much as you would this generally. Next is Auto Dragon, and oh my god, this thing. So good, but so bad. So on rotation, there's a great chance of inflicting 2 burn to a random opponent. It's a 50% chance. I want to put this in D tier because I hate this, because I've had him, and I had literally like a clover on this guy, so it should have been like a 65% chance for him to burn things, and he just failed me. Like almost every turn I was not getting burns, and I was getting so mad. On rotations, I mean. So I'd rotate like my team like 3 times, and I'd not get a burn, and I was like, that's not mathematically possible. Like, it shouldn't be happening. So I like him, but he's so situational because of that. I'm actually going to put him in C. I think he's probably B tier, realistically, but I want to put him in C because he just failed me completely when I had him. He never burned. He should be burning way more than, like, this guy does, and I would arguably rather have him just knowing I'm going to get the burn than I would him. Fairly, we'll put him in B tier. I mean, he's B tier. I just think he sucks. Anyways, then you have Cobrasaur, which is essentially a spell burn. Every time you click on him, he does 3 int burn fire onto the enemy leader. He's probably a B tier. Or no, he's probably an A tier. I'd say he's a better burn buffer than this guy is, because you can get 9+ burn on the enemy leader at some point, and you can actually, he has decent attack stats and decent health as well, and you can increase the int on him to get the burn up, and you can target the burn. That's the reason I give him higher than him. The burn will be able to stack, and it will go higher with this character than it will with the this guy. Next is Pavanox, which is the Phoenix. When he dies, he comes back with additional strength based on int, which is 6. And essentially it regenerates half. So he has 14 health, 6 strength, and 6 int. His thing is, he dies, he is reborn with about 7 or 8 health, and then he has 12 damage. So he's essentially one of these guys. Like, he's like an attacker. But I would put him in A tier. I think he's better than the Hound. And actually, I'm going to put him here. I think he's better than it varies. It depends on his gear. I'm going to put him there because he is gear-based. There's gear in this game that help him out greatly and make him better. But he's a good attacker because he's meant to die. There are actually items like every time you die, you gain strength. It's actually called like the Phoenix Feather or something, which if you get that item and you get this guy, he's just super good because he'll have to die because he's meant to, and then he respawns. He has like 7 attack now on top of the additional 6 he's getting from the int. And then you just win the fight, hopefully, without dying again. And then worst case, you die again, and you're able to revive him, and then he just gets more attack. Like, he can be insane. And then you stack, you get health increases on him, which then increases his revive healing. If you get the iridescent version, I would actually say he's S, because he fully heals every time and gains the strength. And if you get the right items, he's just really strong. He can be really strong. He's a fun Chimera to use. But you need certain items to maximize his capabilities, but he is a good Chimera. I've never seen him and then seen the Feather together in a random match. I would love to actually get that with him and then see how that plays out, because I feel like that'd be super fun. Anyways, next is Murmelk, which is on spawn gains sneaky. He has a lot of health and no damage. you can cheese the game with this guy. I don't even know. I've never seen him. For being able to take. I don't know if you can actually get him, because you could literally cheese the game literally by getting him. I'm assuming you can, but I just have never seen him. His iridescent is also, he gains relentless, so then he becomes even harder to kill. But he would be like, he's not like a high damage attacker, but you, like, over the scale of the game, you can just make him way stronger, and he's never going to die unless he gets rotated out of the starting slot, because he can't get hit. Again, I've never seen him as a playable character. I don't know if I'm assuming he is. I just never have seen him, but I would actually take him and then just put him in my leader slot and then buff him up, in particular his strength, and then just attack with him, because I feel like you could just cheese the enemy and just have him attack into you and they would just always miss. Energy Blast would be the only thing that counters him. Anyways, that's enough from him. His iridescent version is like S tier, by the way, I would say, just because it's probably insane that you could do some crazy stuff with him. Next is the Penguin. He's very cute looking. He actually, oh my god, what's that? That kind of looks like the Star Wars new thing from the new movies, kind of, except the Penguin version. Anyways, what Tuzun does is when he dies, he gives frozen to all opponents. He has to die to do this, so I'm putting him in D tier. I'll put him in high D tier because he's actually useful, but he needs to die to actually do his job. And normally you don't want your guys to die. He's a better opponent creature than he is for you, I would say. You normally don't want your creatures to die. Anyways, next is Carousel. Turn end, if it's not in leadership, attacks a random target. It's a worse version of the Wolf, is what this is. I'm actually going to put him in C, because he... Yeah, well, he's kind of like the Praying Mantis, kind of. We'll put him next to the Praying Mantis. I mean, they essentially do the same thing. They're very similar. Wolf is better, though. Wolf is essentially guaranteed damage. This is a very good opponent monster, not as good for you. So what this does is it removes all buffs when attacked on the enemy. It does have a decent amount of health and does have a decent amount of strength. I would argue this is a better opponent monster than it is a you monster. You don't want to face this thing, because if you have guard or stuff, it will just get rid of your guard. It's annoying. So this is another one of those monsters that I would argue is better for the opponent than it is for you. Where is he? Carbuncle, the gem ruby crab here. So when he's attacked, once per turn, it forces the attacker to attack its own team. So essentially, he goes to hit you, but he hits his own teammate instead. He's okay, but he's better for the enemy than he is you. You don't want to really... It only works once, and then beyond that, it's not helpful. You could probably put him at the bottom of B tier, because it kind of does the same effect. It's weird. I could put him in B tier. I could see it having usage. On spawn, grants random ally Sneaky. Sneaky is really strong. Again, this is one of those Chimera that I've never seen. I don't know if he's obtainable. I'm assuming he is. But he grants Sneaky, and then when he's special, he actually grants Focus too. So he's just nuts. He makes one of your other Chimeras just sneaky. Again, I'm going to put him in A. I've never seen him, but he would be a very good support, just because he would make one of your Chimera essentially invulnerable as long as he's the only thing getting killed. I would love to actually see that creature. Next is Glavictos. Super strong with certain builds. Overall, I would put him in lower S, or lower A, as an attacker. I'd actually probably put him in front of Raiden. What he does is every time you attack, he attacks with you. Which is just strong. The iridescent version just literally attacks over and over. If you get the iridescent version, that's probably S tier, with certain builds in particular. But he's a decent thing. The only issue with him is that he has a very weak attack and very weak health. I think they thought his ability was so good that they had to lower his strength, because I think originally his strength was higher. I don't think that was necessary with what we have in the game. I think you could make him a 3 or a 4 attack and he would still be balanced. But Wahlberg, our giant will here, is when he gets hit, he gets frozen to the attacker. He's solid. I would put him in B tier. You get a free frozen support. I'd put him up pretty high. He has a good amount of health, doesn't have good damage, but he's there to get hit, give the enemy frozen, and then be rotated out. He's alright. His debuff's good enough to warrant a B slot, I would say. Then you have Wasai. When he's attacked, this guy right here, this awesome looking shark creature, he looks like one of the street sharks from the 90s, I want to say it was. He attacks back, essentially. He counters. And countering is really strong. I would honestly put him in A. He could even be considered an S tier. But I'd put him in A, high A tier. I think he's one of the strongest A tier attacker slot units to have. He's really good with a healer. If you get a healer with him, you pretty much win. You know, like whatever your third Chimera is doesn't really matter at that point. As long as he's getting some heals, he'll just counter and kill the enemy. Rek'Har, which is the octopus here, he inflicts blind on attack. That's very strong. Blinding the opponent so they can't hit you is able to give you control over your opponent while dealing damage. Do I think he is B tier, or do I think he's... I think he's A, because I think blind is good enough to warrant A tier, because there's usage there beyond just dealing damage. And sometimes controlling the enemy, right, if you're going to be put into a long game that you don't want to be put into, blind is very strong. So we're going to put him in lower A, because I think he has use. And then you have Mushrimp, which every time it dies, it revives with 50% health. If KO'd, revives and heals 50% of its health. It has, and on the start of the turn, it requires mana to revive, I think. So pretty much you have 2 mana with it, and it restores its health. It's essentially it's like the Phoenix. It's actually, in a way, it's actually better than the Phoenix. This is very interesting. I'm going to put it up with the Phoenix, but I'm not sure which one's better. This one can die and then you could lose another minion, whereas this one gets reborn, but I guess you're going to still lose, right? So I'm going to put them about equal, because I think they kind of serve the same purpose. I think this one could be really crazy, though, because it requires mana to revive. If you have more mana on this, this could be insane. Like if it's on the Will's team and you get the extra mana dice and you just stack mana, that would be insane to have. This is normally the 3rd tier mini boss elite fight, by the way. You have to kill 3 of these in 1 turn, which is pretty easy to do with a lot of builds. But if you know that going into the 3rd match, you kind of know what you're facing. This is what you're facing. It doesn't revive if they all die. So Mariluke is one of my favorites. There's actually like a lucky, it's called, fight mode you can go into, and he's S tier. The normal version is 25% chance. The other version, you know, he's not really S tier. He's probably high A tier, though. He's probably underneath this guy, because countering is guaranteed, whereas his attack is. Akama's attack is. Where did Akama go? Oh, he's down here. So Akama is very similar to him. He always gets the attack, but it only happens once, whereas he can do it multiple times, but it's very low. If you play on Lucky, though, you can get him to start at like 65% chance to hit twice, and that's just nuts. Normally, he'll be 25% chance. He has a decent amount of health and pretty low damage, but, you know, he hits multiple times. So we'll probably put him there in a normal game. But if you play on Lucky, super fun. This is a super fun mode to play with him. I like playing that mode, honestly, a lot, because it's just fun to play with this guy with some interesting combos. Next is Walvin. And what Walvin does is when he's attacked, he grants focus to all his allies, so then they all deal additional damage. Walvin is very solid. He guarantees focus to your allies, but he requires getting hit to do so. I'd put him in A tier. I'd put him above the Newt. Focus is pretty strong. Deals double damage for a hit, which is just great. You can get like strong attack with that, and that could do something good for you. He's situational in a sense, but I'd argue probably better. Rotation grants 1 intellect to its allies for the rest of the turn. This just buffs up your int creatures. We're going to put him in B. We're going to put him right here in B as a support. I think he has usage. Is his usage super good? It can be, depending on your team. And that's pretty much where I am at with him. The only thing that can make it better would be if it was permanent int, but there is no permanent int from him. Next is one of my favorite chimeras is the Gambos. When your ally gets hurt, it gains strength, 1 strength to that ally that got hurt for the rest of the battle. Unfortunately, it's not affected by int. You just get 1 strength, but it is permanent int. It's permanent strength. So you always get 1 permanent strength if you get hurt, if this is on your team just sitting in the back lines. It's essentially the bunny, except permanent. The only difference is you need to get hit. I would arguably put it in S. I actually think having permanent strength on essentially on your leader is generally really powerful. It works really well with like him because he counters, right? So if he's at 6 strength and he gets hit, which he's supposed to because he counters, right? He then gains 7th strength because he's on the team, and it does work multiple times per turn. The iridescent version is actually, I would argue, weaker than this because it only lasts for 1 turn, but you have int on it, so you can increase it. It would have been cool if they capped this at 2 int or something, but did let you increase it. But they didn't do that because it'd be too strong. I understand why they did what they did with this, but this is probably an S tier unit. Even the basic version is really strong. The iridescent can be very strong in the right team, but I would say the actual regular version is stronger than the iridescent version is. Then you have Torlock. This guy's super annoying to face, but he's also can be very annoying for the enemy as well, depending on your team build. If you're playing a rotation build, he's just like a free rotation once he ends up in the attack leader slot. I'm going to put him in as a solid leader choice simply for rotation teams. He's probably like, these are all rotation guys right here. I would argue that as a rotation member, as a support and as a leader, he's pretty solid. So we're going to drop him here because he's both good as a support and as a leader. He's meant to be kind of a support leader. I actually got the iridescent version of him one time, and it was just funny because he keeps gaining iridescence and doesn't die. So it can be solid. Furrodell is allied strength gain, inflicts burn on a random opponent. That's okay. Inflicting burn is always good. Is it good enough? Because of the strength gain, I would say it's probably either B or C. It's essentially doing what he does by punching when you get strength, burning. I'm going to put him in high C. I think burn's pretty strong. I think having burn instead of him would actually be better. The only issue is it puts it on a random target. It would be better if it put it on the opponent's leadership, but you can't win them all. So C, because it's not targeted at the opponent's leader, its int can be increased to make it better. Just a solid unit. It's a solid support unit just to sit there. Next is Boshi. Boshi's pretty good. So what Boshi does is when you have him, he has 3 casts of putting frozen on an enemy target, which means you essentially deal double damage. He has a decent amount of health. His attack's garbage, but he's meant to be a support unit that just sits there and buffs, dealing additional damage. We're going to throw him... Honestly, he's probably as a support unit, he's either high A or he's S. Late game, he's S tier probably. Normally, he's probably A tier. I'm going to put him in high A. These are kind of your damage dealing guys. These are kind of your buffer guys here. These are your fire guys. I kind of have them separated in support for what they do as well. Like, he's a better healer than him normally. But this is close because it always is your leader. This is a better guy at moving your team because he targets it, whereas this is random. Pretty much, I'm putting them in a way that makes sense, just so you guys know. So this guy helps deal additional damage, and he deals double damage. And helps your leader deal double damage. Which is really strong. He can do it 3 times. If you have additional mana, he can get additional mana and do it more. It's a very strong ability. I would say it's almost S tier capable. It's pretty close to what he does, honestly. So, next is the whale, who pretty much what he does is he clashes with the opposing leader as a spell. So he's generally a support. Like, I don't make him my main attack. I put him in the one of the back lines, and then I use this spell to clash when I need some extra damage. He has 5 mana, 26 health, which is decent, and 6 attack, which is decent. And he can clash with the enemy by clicking on him and using a spell, which he'll deal 6 damage, or whatever his attack is that's been improved, hopefully. And he has a decent amount of health where he can take hits. He's just a decent backliner. He essentially is the wolf, except worse, because he has to take damage in return. But he is okay. I think that he's a solid choice to get. Strizzly, which is the owl bear here, he's probably he's considered like an attacker. He does bleed, which is 3 bleed. He has a decent amount of health, has a decent amount of strength. And the bleed is 3, but can be increased with int. He's a strong attacker as well. He's one of those guys that you use, and then you try to rotate the enemy team. Where would I put him as an attacker? It's hard to say, because all these guys are doing different jobs, but he's a bleed attacker. He's kind of unique, and it is good, because then you rotate, they take damage, they're taking 8 damage, and then you're going to take a little bit more damage as you rotate them around. He's just a solid attacker minion, and the more attacks you get, the more bleed you get, and then you can rotate him. He works well with the where's the other guy that bleeds? Not the bird. The bird, when he enters lead, he gives everyone bleed. These two would go well together. The ant's okay, but he needs to be attacked. Like this and this would be a good team with like a healer, because then you could rotate, get the more bleed, and then rotate the enemy team, rotate back, that kind of stuff. Pretty good. Chimera is very strong for the enemy and not as strong for you, because confusion is really good, but it's better on the enemy than, or it's better on against you than for you. I'm gonna put him in C tier. I do think he's strong. It's no more opponent dice. It just happens. It gives the opposing leader confusion. Actually, we're gonna put him in B tier. It's just 3 damage whenever he attacks every turn for a unit to just sit there and do nothing. Because the opponent will always use up all its dice. It's better than the Firefly, I can tell you that. He's a pretty solid choice. He's a backliner. He sits there and inflicts confusion on enemies, so when they attack, they die. Pretty much. Then you have Karappa. Karappa gets shield every time he's attacked, once per turn. He has no health, and he's an okay attacker. The whole point of him is to get shield and to not die. I'm putting him in C tier. He is not a bad unit, because he gets guard. The issue is you need to have a build around him to make him work. But he isn't bad. You just need to survive an attack, get guard, and then be able to survive every other attack. If he gets any debuffs on him, he just dies, though. That's why I'm putting him in C. Like, he's a very specific build. You need to get extra health on him to make him work. There's a lot of effort and time put into him to make him good, when you can just have a better unit. Next is Gargalot. He inflicts poison based on int. It's 1 poison. It's automatic at the start of your turn. It will always give an enemy poison. He does 5 damage, which is okay, and he has 16 health. They probably should have gave him, for the player, like 20 health, and he would have been better, because his point is that he's inflicting poison, which poison is a damage over time buff. which is interesting. I think a little bit more health on him would have went a long way. But again, he's better for the enemy than he is for you. I'm going to put him in... I want to put him in B tier, but honestly, I think he's C tier. With more int and more poison, he does good. His iridescent version is actually decent because it always inflicts poison on every enemy, which means once you start getting a couple int on him, they're always going to have stacks of poison on him. The issue is he does nothing other than that. Like, you're probably never going to want to move him into the attack slot if you don't have to. But I think... I guess he's B. I think he's B tier. You're just not going to fight with him. He's just there to do some extra poison damage. There's better options, but he's not bad. You know what I mean? Like, I can't say he's bad for what he does. You just need to get at least one more int on him, and then he's alright. He can be really good if you get a couple stacks of int, just because you're going to be dealing poison damage every turn. But again, it's not a hastily way of beating your enemy. And really, the iridescent version is needed for him to be truly effective, I would say. But he's probably B tier. He's either C tier or B tier. Abarachi is C tier simply because when your ally dies, he gains strength. He gains a lot of strength for the rest of the battle, but he has no health to start, and he doesn't have a good amount of attack to start. So you're essentially killing all your teammates to buff him up. And when you have to fight more battles than one battle, that isn't good. Unless you have ways to revive your team, it's just not good to kill your allies. So he's a very good enemy to fight, you know, like against you kind of thing. But when you're using him, he's not as good, unfortunately. Half health grants strength to your team for the rest of the battle. This is pretty good because this is a support buff. This is probably up here. I want to say S, but I would actually say that you're probably going to get more use out of the Gambo than you would him. Like, you would actually get more strength from him than you would him. And this requires him dying to even get the strength in the first place, which is not always great. The thing is, I would arguably say his route is good or better than the bunny, because it is permanent strength once you do get it. You just have to take damage to do so. We'll put him there. Then you have the other guy who increases everyone else's int at half strength. He's probably B tier, because he does worse than, I think, it's hard to say. This really is team dependent, right? Because you need someone with int. This could be C tier, this could be B, it could be A. I mean, because when you look at him on his own, he's probably C tier, because there's no guarantee you even have int on your team. But if you get int on your team, and it's a good intelligence, based creature like a healer or something, this could be really good. So I'm going to put him in B because he's very situational, and I'm going to put him at the bottom of B for support, just because he's so situational that it's going to depend on your team construction that you'd even take him. Gorsalot he attacks all opponents when you click on him for spell damage. He has a decent amount of health. He only has 4 damage, but he hits all the enemies, and he has that up to 3 times, which is 12 damage overall. He's like a worse version of him, except he can use his ability more if you have mana dice, and you can upgrade his strength. So overall, he might end up becoming stronger than him. We'll put him up here. He's probably better than the fish and him, but he's probably weaker than him. These two are going to trade. Eventually, he'll become better, probably. He'd probably be up here, but I'm going to put him... Initially, he's here. So, we're kind of looking at the start. Endgame, he's probably stronger than both of these guys. If you've had him. Now, one of my favorite guys that needs more health is Galvarin. So, when he gets rotated, he gives 1 strength to your team for the rest of the fight. And that's based on int. He's like a better version of Gambo. You just rotate, gain the strength, and then you're solid. And you can stack this. So you can get like 3 int on this guy, and then he just gives 4 strength the rest of the battle for a rotation. And it only works once per turn, but that's 4 damage. Like, it's just crazy what this guy can do. He's essentially similar to this guy. Depending on the build, like, this guy could be better. If you're using him, he's probably better. But there's certain builds where he's going to probably be better. So, these guys are both very good. For a legendary creature, though, he should probably have more health. It would have been better if they gave him, like, 20 health and then, like, 4 attack or something and just made him weak. And then his whole point was to just stack int and buff him. Then we have Mukodon, which should be one of the strongest things in the game, but it isn't. So this guy is really fun. And has potential, because at the end of the turn it gains strength for the rest of the fight. The issue is it starts with no health, and its strength starts pretty low as well, and it has very low int to start. This is going to be an A tier because of what it does. I think it has a good amount of potential. Like, you can buff it with berries and stuff, and again, it's going to be your main attacker, so this is generally what you're going to focus your berries on anyways. And if you can put the int berries on this as well, it's going to just get really strong very quickly in fights, and it will snowball, but it takes time to snowball. And the only issue with adding int to this is then you wouldn't be able to add it to your healers. Like, if you get a healer with this, super strong. This has a lot of potential. I would say it's better than these. Well, the potential of this is better. And we're going to put it by potential, because that's kind of how I've been doing it. I think it could be considered B tier, but I think it has the potential to not be. Really, they should have gave this more health. If you gave this 18 health instead of 14, I think it would have definitely be A tier. I have a hard time putting it in B tier because of how good it can be. It probably starts off in B tier, but by the end of the game, you're probably looking at A or S. So, if you're a new player, though, I will say this for this unit: do not, pick this as your main fighter, because you'll probably lose. The last thing is Dracopel. The issue with this guy is he deals damage to himself. So he's, every turn he deals 1 damage to himself, and he has 24 health, he has 10 strength, and he has int. You don't want to increase his int because that kills him quicker. But he's actually better than I would say he's better than these guys, because he... Oh, actually, that's not true. He's probably better than, he's probably worse than the sleeping guy, but he's probably better than everyone else that's below him here. He's just a heavy damage dealer with a good amount of health. His iridescent version just makes it a 50% chance that he's going to hurt himself instead of a 100% chance, which makes him more efficient as well. Anyways, that's my tier list, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. It's a little bit long. There's a lot to talk about. If you guys enjoy this, throw a like, subscribe, and watch some of my Dicefolk battle videos. I do go through each of the talismans so you guys can see them. I did them blind, and enjoy the content. All right, I'll check you out in the next video. Have a good day. Later, guys.